Hi, and welcome to this episode of John's Model Kit Review. Today I am looking at Tamiya's beautiful 1/48 scale Ki-46 III Dinah. The Tamiya kit number is 61045. The correct pronunciation of Ki-46 is actually Ki-46, and so I'm going to be using that pronunciation throughout this review. In this model kit review, I'm going to be giving some history on the Ki-46. I'm also going to be looking at the kit and what comes in the box. I will then move on to my construction notes and go over any issues I had with the kit or problem areas to look out for. The next thing I will do is outline my colors and markings that I used on this kit, paint callouts and such. And finally, I will give my conclusions on the kit. Ki-46 history. During the Sino-Japanese conflict, prior to the onset of World War II, it became obvious to Japanese Army leaders that a new reconnaissance aircraft would be required to cover the vast distances then being encountered in China. Specifications for a high-speed, long-range reconnaissance aircraft were submitted to the Mitsubishi Corporation in 1937, with speed and range a priority. Completed in 1939, the prototype had few teething problems. However, speed was some 10% less than hoped for. It was still faster than Allied fighter aircraft and even their own A6M20. Mitsubishi was working on an advanced version of their HA-26 engine, the HA-102, so the Ki-46 was put into production as the Army Type 100 Model 1 command reconnaissance plane. In March of 1941, the 1,080 horsepower HA-102 engine became available and the Ki-46-2 went into production. This was assigned the Allied code name Dinah in 1942. The P-38F Lightning and F-4U-1 Corsair were expected soon in the Pacific, and to counter this threat, Mitsubishi was told to increase the performance by using two 1,500 horsepower HA-112-2 engines. Ki-46-3 testing began in December of 1942, and the results were outstanding, with a top speed of 630 kilometers per hour at 6,000 meters and a ceiling of 10,000 meters. Produced throughout the war, the aesthetically beautiful Ki-46-3 flew almost unmolested until 1945, when Allied fighters were finally able to intercept this high-flying reconnaissance speedster. The Ki-46 has looks that are polarizing. Some people think it's the ugliest plane ever, and some people think it's one of the most elegant planes ever built. To me, I think it's such a neat and unique looking aircraft, and I love the cleanness of the design. I'm definitely in the camp that thinks that this is a beautiful plane, but beauty is certainly in the eye of the beholder. The kit. Released in 1996, Tamiya's Ki-46-3 was not the first 1/48 scale plastic kit of this plane. I think Nichimo did one back in the day, but the Tamiya kit remains the most accurate and available. When I saw this kit on the hobby store shelf in 1997, it instantly went to the top of my most wanted list. Back then, the $39.95 asking price was too rich for my modest modeling budget. A few years later, the store was having a going out of business sale, and I picked this kit up in a package deal for $15. This kit is molded in light gray plastic with finely engraved panel lines. 2 seated figures are included, and for a twin-engine plane, there are relatively few parts. And to be honest, the level of detail out of the box is certainly not up to today's Wonder Kit standards. The instructions are excellent, and even the paint callouts have actual colors listed, as well as the Tamiya brand paint numbers. The engraved detail on the kit is somewhat minimal, but thankfully it's restrained, and it does look good under a nice coat of paint. Construction. I started construction by painting the interior parts, wheel wells, and interior fuselage parts in a light shade of interior green. Other bits on the interior were painted and assembled and detailed. They were given a wash to bring out detail and dry brushed to further enhance that detail. I added 2 sets of Edwards pre-painted Imperial Japanese Army seatbelts at this time. The ample greenhouse on this plane means that any time spent on detailing the interior pays off. The fit of the interior parts was great. There were 2 main problem areas that I encountered on this kit, the first of which was the main landing gear. The main landing gear had a prominent mold shift seam that was a pain to clean up without flat siding the round landing gear legs. Also, the two-part gear bays have a prominent seam down the center that is impossible to get rid of. You see, the gear bay halves trap the main landing gear in place when glued together. The landing gear then blocks any attempt at seam cleanup. At least it's not readily visible once the kit is completed. On the plus side, this design means that the landing gear is very sturdy. Next, I assembled and painted and detailed the engines. They are simple three-piece affairs, one of which is a nylon prop retainer, but they turned out nicely. It's a shame that they are nearly invisible on the finished model due to the design of the engine cowling. I did not glue the engines or exhausts on at this time, since they are easier to install after the airframe is painted. At this time, I assembled the fuselage and wing as separate assemblies. When each was dry, I test fit them. The fit of the wing to the fuselage was tight, so I sanded the fuselage a bit at the wing roots and glued them together. The tail planes were added next and they fit perfectly. Finally, I used white glue to attach all the clear bits, which fit nicely, I might add. I only noticed one flaw on the exterior of the airframe. The upper right wing of my kit had some sink areas on the leading edge near the wingtip. On a plane with this many windows, one might expect that masking them off was a pain. It was. On the real plane, it was not uncommon for crew to suffer from anoxia, which is a lack of oxygen, due to the extreme altitude at which they operated. While masking this beastie, I suffered from anoxia due to the fact that I hold my breath while concentrating. Tamiya tape and several new number 11 X-Acto blades later, I was ready for paint. Colors and markings. I chose to use the kit markings for a plane flown by the Dokuritsu Hikotai 55th Chutai, and I may have butchered that pronunciation. The upper color calls for Imperial Japanese Army green, but I used Imperial Japanese Army brown instead, as it better matched the box art on this kit. I airbrushed polyscale acrylics, first spraying the interior color on the window framing, then spraying a lightened Imperial Japanese Army gray on the underside of the plane. I masked off the underside and shot the upper side of the plane with Imperial Japanese Army brown, as previously mentioned. I then highlighted panel lines and exhaust stains using artist pastels applied with a closely cropped, dry paintbrush. I removed any excess pastel with a kneadable eraser. This tones down the effect to a more realistic level. I then clear-coated the model with future floor polish and added the decals. Choosing to be a little bit lazy here, I used the kit-supplied yellow wing ID decals, and they didn't completely conform to the wing, and they left a few wrinkles. The rest of the decals went down okay, but they are a little bit on the thick side. Once the decals were dry, I gave my Ki-46 a final coat of almost flat clear. I used an oil-based wash to further pick out detail and add some surface staining to the airframe. The landing gear, wheels, engines, exhausts, and other final bits were added at this time. I used Tester's silver oil-based paint to simulate chipping around maintenance panels. Conclusions. This kit was an eye-opener. I expected perfection, and instead I got a nice kit. As far as overall detail, this kit is closer to an AMT A20J, which I built at about the same time, than it is to an Edward ME110. This is not all bad. The kit can easily be finished over several weekends, and it looks quite nice when complete. The low parts count, simple paint scheme, and generally excellent fit mean that I can recommend it as a great first multi-engine build. Recommended for modelers with a little experience. I'd love to know what you guys think. If any of you have built this kit and want to share your experience, please feel free to leave comments in the comment section below. As always, I hope you found this video entertaining and informative, and until next time, model on.